At 11:07 p.m., my landlord called for the third time, and I didn't answer, because I already knew what he'd say. Eviction, final notice, no mercy. The hotel bar was so quiet I could hear the ice melt inside my glass like a slow countdown. I sat at the far end of the polished wood, hiding behind a cheap white wine I couldn't justify. My phone face down beside my purse like that would stop reality from glowing through it. I'd been fired 3 hours earlier, not screamed at, not accused. Just erased. Budget cuts, Lena. Nothing personal. The kind of sentence that pretends to be gentle while it snaps your spine. 28 years old, no job, 2 months behind. And my 16-year-old sister Marisol, still expecting me to pick her up from her diner shift like my life hadn't just collapsed. I stared at the dim screen anyway. 3 missed calls, 1 voicemail. The kind that would keep me awake until sunrise. A shadow slid into the seat beside me. "Excuse me," a woman said, voice refined, velvet smooth with a faint Italian edge. "Is this stool taken?" I looked up and forgot to breathe for half a second. She was elegant in a way you couldn't fake. Silver hair swept back like a crown, pearls that didn't try too hard. A cream suit that looked custom-made for someone who never begged. Late 60s, maybe. She wore kindness like perfume. Soft, expensive, and carefully measured. "It's yours," I managed, gesturing. She sat with the calm precision of someone used to rooms changing shape around her. The bartender appeared instantly, smiling too wide. "Campari and soda, per favore," she said, without looking away from me. Then her gaze pinned me, sharp, assessing, almost gentle. "You've had a terrible day," she said like she'd read it off my skin. I let out a sound that could have been a laugh if it hadn't died halfway. "That obvious?" "I've seen that face," she murmured. "In mirrors, in prayer, in women who are trying not to break." Her hand extended, nails perfect but not flashy. Agata Morozova. The name tugged at my memory like a hook catching fabric. "Lena Reyes," I said, taking her hand. Her grip was unexpectedly strong, like her softness was a choice, not a weakness. Her drink arrived. She took a delicate sip, then spoke again. "Forgive my forwardness," she said, "but you have an honest face. I need someone honest tonight." I raised an eyebrow, suspicious by survival instinct alone. "I'm not sure I'm your girl. I just lost my job and I'm about 3 bad decisions away from living in my car." "Perfetto," she said, like I'd just given her exactly what she wanted. I blinked. "You're joking?" Her smile barely lifted. "No, Kara. That means you have nothing to lose." Something in her tone made me set down my glass. "What do you want?" I asked quietly. Agata studied me the way a jeweler studies a stone, looking for fractures, value, truth. "How would you feel," she said, "about earning $20,000 for 1 evening's work?" My heart stuttered like it didn't believe numbers that large belonged to my life. 20,000 would fix everything that was screaming at me. It would buy time. It would keep Marisol safe. It would turn panic into breath. It would also come with a price. "What's the catch?" I asked, careful. Agata's smile turned small and oddly sad. "I need you to pretend," she said, "to be my son's fiancé for dinner tonight." I stared at her. Of all the answers I expected, illegal errands, dirty money, smuggling, blackmail, that wasn't even on my list. "My son has business associates coming," she continued smoothly. "Traditional people. They expect him to be settled. They expect a family. And he isn't?" I asked. "He is married to work," she said with mild contempt. "And there is a family, Duval, who would like to arrange a marriage alliance with their daughter." The name Duval hit me harder than it should have, because now the thread in my memory snapped into place. Morozova, Morozov, Boston, rumors, newspapers that never said certain words out loud. Agata's eyes sharpened. "I will not allow my son to be chained to vipers," she said. "Not to Claude Duval and not to his daughter, who smiles like glass and calculates like her father." The bar suddenly felt colder. "Why me?" I asked, and the question slipped out raw. Agata's gaze softened for a fraction. "Because you understand family," she said. "You would do anything to protect it." My throat tightened as my sister's face flashed in my mind. Marisol with her diner apron, Marisol with her math homework, Marisol pretending she wasn't scared of the world since our mother died. "Yes," I whispered. "I understand. Then you understand why I must do this." She reached into a designer bag I couldn't even pronounce and slid a small card toward me. The paper was thick, expensive, confident. "Dinner is in 2 hours. My driver will take you. A dress will be delivered. Jewelry, shoes, everything." I stared at the card like it might bite. "Does your son know?" I asked. Agata's smile sharpened into something mischievous. "My son will adjust," she said. "He always does." "You're hiring me to ambush him." "I am hiring you," she corrected, "to save him." I should have said no. I should have finished my wine, picked up my sister, and crawled into bed with my shame like a normal person. But $20,000 isn't normal, and my life wasn't normal anymore either. What if I mess this up? I asked. You won't, Agatha said, and her certainty was terrifying. Because you aren't polished. You aren't trained to perform. Duval's daughter is perfection with a heartbeat. You will be the opposite. You will be real. She took another sip. Give me your address and your measurements. 90 minutes later, I stood in my studio apartment staring at a midnight blue silk dress laid across my bed like a spell. It wasn't flashy, it was powerful. Elegant in a way that whispered money without begging for attention. The shoes had red soles. The jewelry was simple and unmistakably real. A clutch sat beside it with $500 in crisp bills tucked inside. Agata Morozova didn't do half measures. I called Marisol and lied too easily. I got a last-minute catering job tonight. I can't pick you up. She groaned, annoyed, but accepted it. She'd gotten used to the chaos since Mom died. Another lie stacked onto a tower I hated looking at. A black Mercedes arrived. The driver wore a suit and silence. We drove through Boston like I was leaving my life behind, block by block. Back Bay came into view, brownstones like monuments, streets that smelled like old wealth and older secrets. The car stopped in front of a massive home that didn't just look expensive, it looked untouchable. Agata waited on the steps in a black dress that made her look like royalty. She took my hands like we were family. Bellissima, she murmured. Perfect. Then her expression shifted. Serious now. Before we go inside, she said, you must understand something about my son. That he doesn't know, I said. He knows the Duvals are coming, she replied. He does not know you exist. A laugh tried to rise in me and failed. Agata squeezed my fingers. My son is not cruel, Lena, but he is hard, closed. 10 years ago, his father arranged a marriage for him. The girl betrayed him. She sold information to rivals. My stomach dipped. And you want me to convince that man I'm his fiancé? I want you to be exactly who you are, Agata said, firm. Let him see not every woman is a transaction. The front door opened, and the air changed. A man stepped onto the stoop like he owned gravity. Mid-30s, over 6 feet, dark hair just long enough to look careless by choice. A charcoal suit tailored to his body so precisely it looked painted on. His eyes were steel, cold, watchful, unreadable. Dangerously handsome in the way that made you understand why people ruined their lives. His gaze snapped to Agata first. Mama, he said, voice low, controlled fury wrapped in silk. What did you do? Agata didn't flinch. I brought you a fiancé, she said sweetly. Isn't she lovely? His eyes cut to me. It wasn't a glance. It was an X-ray. I fought the instinct to step back. He didn't even greet me. He addressed his mother like I was an object she'd placed in his path. We need to talk, he said. Inside, Agata replied calmly. The Duvals arrive in 20 minutes. There is no time for your dramatics. His jaw flexed once, tight. He finally looked at me again, full attention now, and it felt like a blade. And you are? He asked, like he already disliked the answer. I lifted my chin because fear didn't pay rent. Lena Reyes, I said. Your mother hired me to pretend to be your fiancé for tonight. I apologize for the ambush, but I'm guessing you're familiar with business transactions. His mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost a threat. How much? He asked. That's between me and your mother. Agata's eyes glittered with satisfaction. See? She has a spine. He held my gaze for a long moment, like he was memorizing every flaw. Then he exhaled. Slow, controlled. Fine, he said. We'll play your game, but this conversation isn't over. Of course not, mio caro, Agata said, serene. Now refresh yourself. Lena and I will join you. He vanished back inside without another word. I finally breathed. He hates me, I muttered. He hates the situation, Agata corrected. There's a difference. She linked her arm through mine and guided me into the house. Inside was marble and crystal and quiet staff moving like ghosts. The kind of luxury that didn't sparkle, it watched. As we crossed the foyer, I caught my reflection in a mirror and barely recognized myself. A broke girl in silk, a liar in diamonds, a desperate sister who just sold her night for $20,000. Agata leaned close. Hook them with sincerity, she whispered. He will help you, even if he pretends he won't. Before I could ask what she meant, we entered the dining room, a table set for 8. White linen, silver that looked older than my entire family line, crystal catching chandelier light like trapped rainbows. And beside the seat meant for me, him, Nikolai Morozov. He'd loosened his tie, top buttons undone, a calculated casualness that somehow made him more intimidating. His forearm rested near my place setting, sleeve pushed up to reveal the edge of a tattoo and bruises that didn't belong to polite society. He leaned close as I sat. "Stay on my right," he murmured, barely moving his lips. "I keep my dominant hand free." My pulse jumped. "Noted," I whispered back. "Should I be worried?" "That depends," he said, eyes forward, voice flat, "on how convincing you are." The doorbell rang. Agatha lifted her chin like a queen about to start a war with smiles. "Remember," she said softly, "you are in love." Nikolai's hand covered mine on the table, warm, firm, possessive enough to sell the lie. He didn't look at me when he spoke, but his voice lowered. "If we're doing this," he said, "we do it properly. They'll hunt for cracks." I swallowed, then turned my hand and laced my fingers through his. His grip tightened a fraction. Something passed between us, not tenderness, agreement. The dining doors opened. Claude Duval entered first, broad-shouldered, mid-50s, smelling like expensive cologne and entitlement. He wore confidence like armor and smiled like everyone owed him something. His daughter followed. Sabine Duval, early 20s, platinum hair, perfect posture, eyes like a mirror that only reflected advantage. Her beauty was clinical, maintained, weaponized. Her gaze dropped immediately to my hand, intertwined with Nikolai's. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. "Nikolai," Claude boomed, extending his hand. "My friend, always a pleasure." Nikolai stood, shook his hand with controlled politeness that never reached his eyes. "And Agatha," Claude continued, kissing her hand, "as radiant as ever." Agatha gestured to their seats. "Welcome. Sit. Let us enjoy the evening." Claude's gaze slid to me. "I see you've brought company." "She isn't company," Nikolai said, voice smooth as ice. His thumb stroked my knuckles like it was habit. "She's family. Or she will be." Silence. Sabine's composure cracked by a hair. Claude's smile froze mid-beam. "I'm sorry," Sabine said, voice precise. "Family? My fiancé," Nikolai clarified, lifting our joined hands. "Lena." He finally looked at me, eyes daring me to betray him. "It's been a whirlwind," he added softly. "Hasn't it, amore?" I forced a smile that felt like stepping onto a tightrope. "Completely unexpected," I said. I didn't exactly plan to fall for someone like Nikolai. He's not warm and fuzzy. A faint twitch at the corner of his mouth. "She keeps me honest," he said. Sabine leaned forward, gaze bright with interrogation. "How did you meet?" Agatha's prepared story flashed in my mind. "At a bookstore," I said. "I reached for the same book. He insisted I take it. Then he showed up the next day with a signed copy because he couldn't let it go." Claude chuckled, recovering slightly. "Persistent. That's our Nikolai. When I want something," Nikolai said, hand sliding to the small of my back. "I don't stop." The touch sent a traitorous shiver through me. Dinner began. Course after flawless course, and I barely tasted any of it. I focused on breathing, on smiling, on being believable. Nikolai played his role like he'd been born for it. He touched me at the right moments. He finished my sentences once or twice. He looked at me like I mattered. Sabine watched like she was waiting for blood in the water. Halfway through the main course, Claude set down his glass. "So, Lena," he said, voice easy, "what do you do for work?" A trap. I held my smile steady. "Event coordination. I'm in between roles right now." Sabine's laugh was tiny, sharp. "How convenient." Agatha's voice cut in, polite but lethal. "Sabine, I'm only curious," Sabine said sweetly. "It's all so sudden. Engaged to Boston's most unreachable man within weeks." My skin prickled. They were close to the truth. I met Sabine's gaze. "I understand you expected a different outcome tonight," I said, calm. "But I'm not going anywhere. So I suggest we all practice being gracious." Nikolai's hand tightened on my back. Across the table, a man I'd barely noticed, dark eyes, silent posture, watched me with faint approval. Agatha had whispered his name earlier. Victor, head of security. The man who knew everything. Claude laughed without humor. "Spirit, I like that." Then he leaned back, eyes narrowing. "But this complicates our discussions." "How so?" Nikolai asked mildly. Claude's smile sharpened. "I'd hoped our families might unite in more than commerce." Sabine turned her attention to me like a blade. "Tell me, Lena, what is it you love about him? His charm, his warmth?" The sarcasm was thick. I glanced at Nikolai. Hard profile, cold eyes, tension in his jaw like a storm, and I surprised myself by telling the truth. "I love that he doesn't pretend," I said quietly. "In his world, everyone wears a mask. He doesn't. He's exactly what he is. That honesty is rare." Something shifted. Nikolai's hand moved from my back to my shoulder, squeezing gently, an unconscious motion like he'd forgotten he was supposed to be made of ice. "She understands me," he said, voice rougher now. Then he looked directly at Sabine, something you never did. Sabine's cheeks flushed. Claude's posture stiffened. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. Nikolai's eyes went colder. "Don't." Sabine swallowed. "We were teenagers, Nikolai. 3 months. 3 months." He cut her off, voice sharp. "Long enough for you to try feeding my name to your father's people." Claude's face darkened. Agatha lifted her glass with perfect calm. Perhaps the Duvals would like to enjoy dessert elsewhere. The air went brittle. Claude stood abruptly, forcing a smile that didn't fit. "Of course. Early meeting." Sabine pushed back her chair, eyes burning into mine like a promise. Then they were gone. The staff cleared dishes like nothing happened. I stood in the foyer clutching the clutch I hadn't used, heart still sprinting. I was ready to ask for the car. Nikolai's voice came from behind me, low and final. "Not yet." I turned. He'd removed his jacket, sleeves rolled, his tie loosened. He looked exhausted and dangerous at the same time. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" I asked, worn out. He stared at me for a long second, then said the sentence that changed everything. "About how you just bought yourself a job for the next 3 months." For a second, I genuinely thought he was joking. My brain latched onto the word job like it was a life raft. Because job meant boundaries. Job meant distance. Job meant I wouldn't get swallowed by whatever I just walked into. "I don't understand," I said, and my voice sounded too small for a foyer this massive. Nikolai stepped closer, stopping just inside my space like he owned it. "Claude Duval won't accept this," he said. "He's already suspicious. Tonight wasn't a defeat. It was a delay." Agatha drifted into view behind him, silent as a shadow, watching with the satisfied patience of a chess player. "He'll dig into you," Nikolai continued. "He'll try to prove you're fake. If he succeeds, he'll use it to force the alliance back onto the table." "So, what?" I asked, the answer already forming like dread. "So," Nikolai said, "we make it impossible." My stomach dropped. Agatha's lips curled. 3 months, Kara." Nikolai ignored her, eyes locked on me. 20,000 was your rate for one night. Consider this an extension." "Extension?" I echoed. 60,000, he said bluntly. 20 per month. You live here, in the guest house. You attend events with me. You hold my hand in public. You smile at the right people. You become real enough that Duval stops hunting." The number hit like a punch. 60,000, rent paid, bills erased, Marisol's tuition someday. A fresh start I hadn't dared imagine when I was staring at my landlord's calls. But it also meant 3 months inside his world. 3 months of danger dressed like elegance. "And after 3 months?" I asked. Nikolai's jaw flexed. "We end it quietly, clean. You walk away with money and your life. I remain free." "Everyone wins," Agatha added softly. I heard the unspoken part, except the girl who might not make it out if she makes the wrong enemy. My phone buzzed in my purse like it was reminding me, "You don't have time to be picky." "What if I say no?" I asked. Nikolai's eyes sharpened, cold, practical. "Then you go back to your studio and late notices. You pick up your sister and pretend you aren't terrified. Claude still comes for me, and the next woman at this table won't be a stranger I can control." The truth in that stung. He knew my situation. Of course he did. Men like Nikolai Morozov didn't ask questions they didn't already know the answers to. I thought of Marisol waiting at the diner, of the promises I made at our mother's funeral, of how tired I was of surviving by inches. I exhaled. "Slow. Deal," I said. I held out my hand. He took it, grip warm and firm, and for the briefest moment it felt less like a transaction and more like a vow. "Good," he said. "Victor will pick you up tomorrow at 9. Agatha's smile softened, and I caught something in her eyes that looked like relief. "Welcome," she murmured, "to the family." The ride home in the Mercedes felt unreal. City lights smeared across the window like wet paint. My heart kept swinging between panic and giddy disbelief. I packed fast. I barely slept. At 9 sharp, Victor arrived, expression unreadable, movements efficient. He didn't ask questions. He simply loaded my life into the trunk like it was another assignment. The guest house was a dream built out of quiet luxury. 1 bedroom, a kitchen larger than my entire studio, floor-to-ceiling windows facing a private garden that looked like nobody had ever cried inside it. It should have felt like winning. Instead, it felt like being placed carefully inside a glass box. Marisol visited 2 days later after school, eyes wide, spinning in the living room like she couldn't believe space could be this clean. "Lena," she hissed, half whisper, half accusation. "You're telling me you're fake engaged to a rich, terrifying, basically a mob guy?" "He's not," I started. She raised a brow. "Don't technically me," I sighed. "It's a job. 3 months, money. I can cover rent, put you in a better school, breathe." Marisol stared at me with that old soul look she'd developed too young. And when it ends? It ends clean, I said, forcing confidence. Contract clean, I walk away. Do they know about me? She asked quietly. My stomach tightened. I'd known that question would come. Yes, I admitted. He had me checked the first night. He knows about you, about Mom, all of it. And he's okay with it? I remembered Nikolai's expression when Victor handed him my file the day I moved in, how his jaw tightened when he read about my sister. Not sympathy, not softness, recognition. I don't think he likes it, I said carefully, but he hasn't told me to stop. Marisol exhaled, uneasy. If this puts you in danger, it won't. I lied, hugging her tight. Another lie, another brick. Because the truth was, Nikolai and I barely spoke. He was gone most days. When he was home, he kept distance like it was oxygen. We had rules, together in public, separate in private, professional, clean, safe. It should have been easy. Instead, I found myself tracking his presence like my nervous system was tuned to him. The sound of his car, his footsteps in the main house, the way staff moved when he entered a room. Friday evening, Agata appeared at my door with garment bags draped over her arm like she was delivering a prophecy. Gala, she announced. Museum fundraiser. Half of Boston will be there, including people loyal to Duval. She laid 3 dresses on my bed. Choose. I picked an emerald silk that made my skin glow, and my eyes looked brighter than fear. Agata smiled. Good. It will match my son's gray suit. You will look like a set. That's the point, I muttered. Agata sat on the edge of the bed, gaze softening. You think this is only performance? It is, I said quickly. My son is difficult, she agreed, and lonely. His father trained him to be hard. Sabine's betrayal taught him softness as weakness. He has been alone ever since. What do you think that is? I asked. Agata didn't hesitate. Fear. The word landed with quiet weight. He fears caring gives someone power to destroy him, she said. So he pushes everyone away, keeps walls of ice. Her eyes met mine. But at that dinner, you cracked something. I didn't crack anything, I argued. I was desperate and hired. Agata's voice sharpened. I chose you because you are real. Before I could reply, Victor appeared at the door. He's here. My heart kicked. Nikolai entered the guest house like the room belonged to him by default. He wore a gray suit, no tie, black shirt open at the throat. He looked like he'd stepped out of a film where men like him never lose. His gaze swept over me in the emerald dress, paused for a fraction too long, then returned to my eyes. You clean up well, he said, like it was a complaint. So do you, I said, and hated how my voice tried to soften. He motioned toward the door. Rules. I followed, heels clicking like a countdown. Stay close, he said as we walked. No wandering. People at this event would love to use you to reach me. Duval, I guessed. Duval, he confirmed. And others. He opened the car door for me. Don't look nervous. You're mine tonight. The way he said mine should have scared me. Instead, it created an unwanted sense of safety. The museum glittered with wealth, champagne, laughter, art nobody understood, but everyone pretended to. Nikolai's hand settled at my lower back as we entered. Possessive, practiced. Every touch, every glance, every staged intimacy was becoming routine. And routine was dangerous because it made the lie feel normal. A man approached, mid-40s, holding a drink like a badge. Nikolai Morozov, he said with a grin. And this must be the famous fiancé. I offered my hand. Lena Reyes. Richard Hawthorne, he said, shaking my hand. Board member. And I have to say, you've caused quite the stir. Nikolai's jaw tightened. Richard laughed. Relax. I mean it as a compliment. He's been Boston's most eligible bachelor since... Well, since what? I asked when Richard melted into the crowd. Nobody you need to know, Nikolai said flatly. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. If we're supposed to be convincing, I should know what Duval will dig up. For a long moment, Nikolai didn't answer. Then he guided me into a quieter alcove near a sculpture gallery and spoke like he was reciting something he hated remembering. When I was 24, he said, my father arranged a marriage. Strategic, useful. My stomach clenched. Sabine. He nodded once, staring past me at a marble statue like it was easier than looking at my face. We dated. Engaged. Wedding planned. His voice went colder. 2 weeks before the ceremony, I found out she'd been feeding details about us to rivals. Security patterns. Shipments. Names. What did you do? I asked, afraid of the answer. I ended it, he said. My father wanted forgiveness. I refused. His eyes finally met mine. Steel and storm. 6 months later, someone used the information she sold to attack one of our warehouses. 3 men died. The words settled over me like ash. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be, he said. It taught me trust is expensive. He leaned closer, voice low. Which is why this works. No feelings, clear terms, no betrayal. You leave when time is up. My chest tightened with something I didn't want to name. Right, I said. Just business. His gaze held mine a fraction too long. Then, Nikolai. Claude Duval's voice slid into the space like oil. We turned. Claude approached with Sabine at his side, both dressed like royalty, pretending to be polite. Well, Claude said, smiling like he enjoyed teeth. Enjoying the evening? Nikolai's hand pressed firmer into my back. Enough. Sabine's gaze locked on mine. I've heard interesting things about you, Lena. Oh? I said lightly. Quite the transformation, she murmured. From nobody to fiancé in less than a month. Love is inconvenient, I said. Claude chuckled. I've always found love predictable, opportunistic. Agatha appeared at my side like she'd been summoned by threat alone. My son doesn't need opportunities, she said sweetly. He needs only to open his eyes. Claude's smile tightened. Agatha, always charming, always careful, Agatha replied. It was a dismissal wrapped in manners. Claude drifted away, but Sabine lingered, leaning in close enough that her perfume tried to warn me. Enjoy it while you can, she whispered. Nikolai doesn't believe in forever. He will use you up and discard you. I met her eyes. Then it's a good thing I'm not here to betray him. Her expression flashed with anger before she walked away. Agatha exhaled. They will investigate you. Nikolai's jaw clenched. Let them. Agatha's gaze went sharp. One dinner is not enough to fool Claude. You must become believable beyond surface. Nikolai's voice turned hard. We had an arrangement. Distance. And I am telling you, Agatha said, it changes. You need history, memories, something real enough to survive scrutiny. My throat went dry. How real? Agatha looked between us. Real enough that when people see you together, they believe you are in love. Nikolai's face tightened like he hated the sentence. But after a long moment, he nodded once. Fine, he said. We adapt. And that's how my schedule turned into a battleground. Mornings, coffee together, learning each other's habits. Afternoons, his meetings, my presence beside him like a signal. Evenings, dinners in public, quiet meals at home, long conversations where silence said too much. He studied me the way he studied threats. You bite your lip when you think, he observed one morning. Lower left. You tap your ring finger when you're impatient, I shot back. 4 times in the last minute. His mouth twitched. You watch too closely. So do you, I said. We were in a cafe in the North End, chosen deliberately because people would see us. Someone took photos. Accidentally. A rumor began to spread like smoke. Morozov finally fell. It should have felt like a strategy. Instead, it began to feel like something else. Nikolai, I said one afternoon, when the air between us turned too heavy. Are we still pretending? He stared at me, and for the first time his eyes looked uncertain. I don't know, he admitted quietly, and that's a problem. My breath caught. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Marisol. Relief hit, until I answered and heard a man's voice instead. Lena Reyes, the voice said, smooth and cultured, with threat baked into every syllable. This is Claude Duval. Ice flooded my veins. Across the table, Nikolai's posture changed instantly. Predator alert. How did you get my sister's phone? I asked, forcing my voice steady. I had a lovely chat with her, Claude said. Bright girl. She mentioned something fascinating. She'd never heard of Nikolai before 3 weeks ago. My blood went cold. If you touched her, I started. Please, Claude murmured. I'm not a monster. She's perfectly safe, for now. The words turned my stomach to lead. But you and Nikolai will meet me tonight, Claude continued. 8 o'clock, Harbor Street Warehouse. My hands trembled around the phone. Come alone, Claude said softly, or I'll have more questions for your little sister. The line went dead. Nikolai stood so fast his chair scraped. What did he say? He demanded. I told him, voice shaking. He talked to Marisol. He's threatening her. Nikolai's face went still, too still. That kind of stillness meant violence was being measured, organized, justified. He won't touch her, he said, voice like granite. Victor already picked her up from school. She's with my mother. Safe. Relief made my knees weak. Then he leaned down, cupped my face with surprising gentleness, and pressed his forehead to mine like he was borrowing courage. Listen to me, he said. Whatever happens tonight, trust me. What are you planning? I whispered. His eyes darkened. Claude made the mistake of going after your family. That breaks every code. He straightened, already moving. He just gave me permission to end this. The warehouse was exactly what nightmares look like in real life. Crumbling brick, broken windows, salt air, and rot. Nikolai parked a block away. Victor followed in another car with men I didn't recognize. You stay in the car, Nikolai ordered. He wants both of us, I argued. His thumb brushed my cheek. I need you safe. That's all that matters. Then he left. Minutes dragged. I heard muffled voices, then a crash, then shouting. I couldn't stay put. I slipped through a side entrance, moving between crates and shadow. Claude's voice echoed ahead, angry and smug. You think you can parade a nobody as your fiancé and make a fool of me? Everyone knows she's a fraud. Careful, Nikolai's voice replied, deadly calm. How you speak about my wife. My pulse spiked. Claude laughed. Wife? Please. You aren't married. I have proof. Do you? Nikolai sounded almost bored. Because from where I stand, you have accusations and wounded pride. You humiliated my daughter, Claude snarled. Rejected her for a diner girl. I don't care, Nikolai said. I care that you threatened her sister. And what will you do about it? Claude mocked. You aren't your father. You don't have his ruthlessness. You've gone soft. The silence afterward was terrifying. Then Nikolai spoke, quiet as a knife. You're right. I'm not my father. A pause. I'm worse. My stomach turned. My father had boundaries, Nikolai continued. I don't. Not when it comes to what's mine. Footsteps. A sharp inhale from Claude. Fear cracking his bravado. This isn't over, Claude said, weaker. Yes, Nikolai said. Final. It is. I heard movement, Claude retreating. Then the warehouse emptied out in fragments. When it was quiet enough, I stepped out from behind the crates. Nikolai leaned against a pallet, breathing hard. A cut on his lip. Bruised knuckles. He looked at me with exhausted fury. I told you to stay in the car. I don't follow orders, I said, voice shaking. Are you hurt? Nothing serious, he muttered. Then his eyes shifted, raw emotion breaking through the armor like lightning. He could have hurt you, he said, if you'd been caught here. But I wasn't, I whispered. Marisol's safe. You protected her. That's my job, he said, rough. No, I corrected, stepping closer. That's your choice. My hand lifted without permission and touched his cheek, gentle near the cut. His hand covered mine, holding it there like he needed it. Lena, he said, voice low and wrecked. This stopped being fake for me somewhere along the way. My heart slammed. I don't know when, he admitted, but it did. He pulled me closer, palm settling at my waist. And when Claude threatened your sister, he whispered, I realized I would burn this city down to keep you safe. My breath shook. That isn't acting, he said. That's real. I stared up at him, at the man who started as a cold deal and somehow became the person my body recognized as safety. I stopped acting too, I whispered. Then I kissed him. Properly. Not for cameras, not for strategy. He kissed me back like he'd been starving. When we broke apart, both of us breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. What do we do now? He asked. We stop pretending, I said. A low sound, half laugh, half disbelief, left him. Then we drove back to the house, hands linked, silence full of everything we hadn't said. Agatha took one look at us when we walked in and smiled like she'd been waiting. Finally, she murmured. I found Marisol pacing in my guest house, eyes wide. I explained the safe version. Enough truth to reassure, not enough to terrify. So you're not fake engaged anymore? She asked. I swallowed. No, it's real. Marisol hugged me hard. Are you happy? The answer surprised me by how immediate it was. Yeah, I breathed. I am. At dawn, a knock rattled the hallway. Victor's voice followed, urgent. Nikolai, we have a situation. Nikolai was out of bed instantly, pulling on clothes like a soldier. I reached for my robe. Stay here, he ordered. Not a chance, I said. We met Victor in the hall. Claude didn't leave Boston, Victor said. My stomach dropped. What? He called a council meeting, Nikolai said, jaw tight. He's claiming I threatened him to cover a fraudulent engagement. A council? I asked. Representatives, Nikolai replied. They arbitrate disputes, prevent wars. And if they believe him? I whispered. Nikolai's eyes went dark. They can strip my rights, freeze assets, force an alliance to restore balance. To Sabine, I breathed. Agatha appeared at the top of the stairs, face calm, eyes bright. Then we tell the truth, she said. All of it, and we show them what it became. Nikolai looked at me, question in his eyes. Was I ready to walk into the wolves' den and claim what we'd become? I thought of Marisol, of the promises, of his hands shaking when he said he'd burn the city for me. I'm ready, I said. Nikolai nodded once. Then we go, he said. And we win. The club where the council met smelled like cigars, old money, and rules that pretended they were civilized. A private room, thick curtains, a mahogany table that looked like it had decided outcomes for a century. 7 representatives sat in silence, 5 men, 2 women, watching the door like it was a courtroom and an execution chamber at the same time. Claude Duval sat at one end with Sabine beside him, both wearing satisfaction like expensive perfume. When Nikolai and I entered, the room turned colder. The oldest man, white hair, heavy ring, eyes that missed nothing, spoke first. "Nikolai Morozov," he said, voice steady. "You stand accused of fabricating an engagement to manipulate alliances and disrupt legitimate negotiations. Claude Duval claims he has evidence your fiancé is an imposter." Claude's smile widened. "How do you respond?" the elder asked. Nikolai's hand tightened around mine. "The engagement began," he said clearly, "as a strategic arrangement. My mother hired Lena Reyes to pose as my fiancé to prevent an unwanted marriage alliance." A ripple of murmurs moved around the table. Claude leaned forward like a shark that smelled blood. "There," he said, delighted. "He admits it." Nikolai didn't flinch. "What began as strategy," he continued, "became real." Claude scoffed. "Pretty words. Where's proof?" My throat went dry. I felt every eye swing to me like a spotlight. I took a breath, then stepped forward. "You want proof?" I asked. Silence. "You want evidence that what we have isn't performance?" I continued, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Fine. Let me tell you what I know about the man I'm going to marry." Sabine's lips curled, mockery already forming. I didn't look at her. I looked at the council. "Nikolai visits 3 graves every month," I said. "He goes on the 14th. Same day, same time. 30 minutes. No excuses. No matter what obligations he has. Because he believes those men died because he trusted the wrong person once." Nikolai's breath caught. Sharp. Involuntary. I kept going. "He pretends he hates his mother's traditions," I said, nodding slightly toward Agata standing near the door, composed as ever. "But he keeps every playbill she saved since he was 16. They're in a drawer in his study, organized by year." One of the council women, dark hair, watchful eyes, tilted her head. "Interesting. He funds scholarships in South Boston," I continued, "and refuses to attach his name, because he says charity done for applause isn't charity." Claude's smile faltered. I turned to Nikolai for a fraction of a second. His face was unreadable, but his eyes looked exposed. "He drinks coffee black with 1 sugar in the morning," I said. "In the afternoon, he switches to espresso because he claims it keeps his head sharp. He reads poetry before bed while telling everyone he only reads financial reports." A stunned hush filled the room, like the air itself was listening. "And he has nightmares," I said, voice softening despite myself, "about his father. About the day everything became his. When he wakes up, he goes to the kitchen and makes tea with too much honey because that's what his mother did when he was a child and he was afraid." The councilwoman leaned forward. "These could be learned, observed, fed to you." "They could," I agreed, nodding. "Except I also know what he sketches when he thinks nobody's watching." Nikolai's jaw flexed. "He wanted to be an architect when he was 8, I said. "He built towers from scrap wood and swore he'd change city skylines. He still draws buildings in the margins of his paperwork late at night, quietly, like he's mourning a life he never got to live." The room went completely still. I moved closer to Nikolai and took both his hands. "I know these things," I said, voice firm, "because he let me close enough to see them. He didn't have to. It wasn't in any contract. He chose it." Claude laughed, sharp and bitter. "Convenient. Suddenly you discover love when you're under scrutiny." Nikolai's gaze snapped to Claude, and something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. "Actually," Nikolai said, voice rough, "it's inconvenient as hell." A few council members shifted, surprised. "Loving Lena complicates everything," he continued. "It makes me vulnerable. It forces me to consider consequences beyond profit. It means choosing her, choosing this over alliances and advantages." He looked at the council. "You want to know if it's real?" he said. "It's the realest thing in my life." Claude slammed his palm on the table. "Then prove it." His eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a man setting a trap. "If she's truly your fiancé," Claude said, voice smooth with poison, "make it legal. Marry her. Right now. In front of the council." A wave of argument burst around the room, some council members protesting, others murmuring about tradition, precedent, consequences. Claude held up his hands like a man offering fairness. "A real engagement leads to marriage," he said. "If he hesitates, we know it's still deception." Sabine's smile returned, small and triumphant. Nikolai's shoulders went rigid. I felt his hands tighten around mine, and in that pressure I felt the panic he wouldn't show anyone else. He turned to me, eyes intense. "Lena," he said quietly, "I know this isn't how you imagined your life." I almost laughed at the understatement. "This is rushed," he continued. "It's pressure. It's not romantic. But I meant what I told you in that warehouse. His voice dropped lower, so only I could hear it. You are the most real thing I've touched in years. My chest ached. If marrying you ends this, he said, protects you and Marisol, then I'll do it. I swallowed, heartbeat roaring. And if I say no? I whispered. If I tell you this is insane? His eyes softened, just barely. Then we wait, he said without hesitation. And I take whatever consequences come. I will not force you. That was the moment I understood something simple and terrifying. He wasn't asking for a trophy. He wasn't buying me. He was offering himself, open-palmed, knowing it could get him hurt. You love me, I breathed, needing to hear it again. I love you, he said steady. I hate it. I fought it. But it's true. My throat tightened. Claude's smug gaze burned into us from across the table, certain he'd cornered us. Agatha stood behind the council members with tears brightening her eyes like she'd been holding her breath for years. And Marisol, my stubborn, brave sister, stood near the door with Victor, watching me like she was ready to storm a castle if I faltered. I exhaled, slow. I don't need more time, I said, louder now, for the room. Nikolai's eyes widened. I turned to the council. I need a witness, I said, and someone authorized to perform marriages. The room erupted. One councilman muttered about logistics. Another stood, annoyed. The elder lifted a hand. We can arrange it, he said, voice calm, if this is your choice. It is, Nikolai said instantly. He looked at me, searching for any hint of doubt. I stepped closer, rising on my toes to whisper against his mouth. I walked into a hotel bar thinking I was finished, I murmured. I'm not letting a snake decide my future. A slow breath left him. Relief, shock, gratitude tangled together. 2 hours later, the private room looked like a hastily assembled ceremony. A judge the council trusted stood near the table. Papers waited. Agatha had somehow conjured flowers and champagne, like she'd bribed the universe. Marisol stood beside me as my witness, eyes wide but steady. You sure? She whispered. I squeezed her hand. Are you okay with this? Marisol hugged me hard, voice shaking. Mom would have loved him, and if he hurts you, I will ruin him. I laughed through the lump in my throat. Deal. The judge cleared his throat. Nikolai faced me, shoulders squared like he was walking into war, and still choosing me. His hands trembled slightly as he took mine. I, Lena Reyes, I said, voice steady, take you, Nikolai Morozov, to be my lawfully wedded husband. The words felt surreal and sharp, like I was carving a new life out of air. Nikolai's gaze didn't leave mine once. I, Nikolai Morozov, he said, voice rough with emotion, take you, Lena Reyes, to be my wife. He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. I promise to protect you, he continued, to cherish you, to trust you with truths I've told no one. And I promise, what began as deception will become the most honest thing I've ever done. My eyes burned. The judge pronounced us married. You may kiss your bride. Nikolai cupped my face with both hands, thumbs brushing away tears I didn't realize had fallen. Thank you, he whispered against my mouth, for taking a chance on a man who forgot how to be human. You didn't forget, I whispered back. You just convinced yourself you couldn't afford it. He kissed me like he'd been starving and finally found air. Applause erupted. Even some council members smiled, unwillingly impressed. Claude stood abruptly, face twisted with rage. This proves nothing. It's still manipulation. Enough, the elder councilman said, voice final. He turned his gaze to Claude. They are legally married, he said. Whatever the initial circumstances, they have demonstrated commitment. This matter is settled. Claude's mouth worked soundlessly. Then he stormed out. Sabine followed, eyes slicing at me like she was promising future pain. When the room finally emptied, it was just us. Me, Nikolai, Marisol, Agatha, Victor. Agatha approached, eyes shining. That wasn't how I imagined my son's wedding, she said softly. But I can't say I'm disappointed. Nikolai shot her a look. You knew. Agatha smiled. I knew you needed someone real. Marisol stepped toward Nikolai, awkward but brave. So, I guess you're really my brother now? Nikolai's expression softened in a way I hadn't seen before. I guess I am. He looked at her seriously. Fair warning. I'm overprotective and I have strong opinions about your education. Marisol grinned. As long as those opinions include paying for it. A laugh rumbled out of Nikolai. Free, genuine, like a door finally opened. That can be arranged, he said. That night, after Agatha finally stopped fussing and Marisol was driven home with extra security, Nikolai and I stood on the terrace of the main house staring at the city lights. Are you okay? He asked quietly. Today was insane. This morning you were my fake fiancé, I said, leaning into him. Tonight you're my husband. His arms wrapped around me from behind, solid and warm. This morning, he said, voice low, I was still lying to myself about what you are to me. He kissed my hair. Tonight, he murmured, I'm married to the woman I love, and for the first time in years, I'm not alone. I turned in his arms to face him. What happens now? He asked. I smiled, tired, bright, real. Now, I said, we figure out how to live without pretending. His eyes darkened, possessive and honest. And you understand something. What? Once I crossed that line, he said, thumb brushing my ring, I don't know how to let you go. I lifted my chin, matching him. Good, I said softly, because I didn't marry you to be temporary. He kissed me again, slower this time, full of promise. And as Boston glittered below us like a city that had no idea what it almost lost, I realized the truth that would have terrified me 6 weeks earlier. I walked into that hotel bar with nothing but desperation. I walked out with a name, a family, and a future that belonged to me. Love, it turned out, was the most dangerous strategy of all.